Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. I am beside myself, excited today to have our guest, Stormie Grace, joining us to talk all things astrology and business and what's happening in 2023. I have been wanting to have her on the show for a long time. Because she's one of those astrologers that I have been following since the beginning of my kind of dive into astrology. And what transpired is that I had a session with her about 2 years ago, and we dove into, I really wanted to know about what was happening in my business. I had just sort of begun this kind of astro infusion into my marketing business. And Stormie was like, that's all great. Career's great. It's going to happen. You're definitely moving into the metaphysical area, but we need to talk about relationships. And she probably doesn't remember this because I know you see so many clients, but I was like, oh, okay, relationships. And then, a month after that session, I met my now husband, and as we're recording this, I'm 2 weeks away from having a baby. So my life has completely done a complete 180 since, we connected and I connected as her client. But I had been following you for a long time. So thank you for all that you do, for your amazing YouTube presence, your amazing YouTube Academy, and for all that you give to the astrology community as well. I so value people who just show up and deliver, and you're one of those people. So thank you so much, and welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely. Gosh, thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be asked. I was just saying this a little bit before, because a part of the just showing up is that sometimes I just show up and do what I'm doing. And it's odd to say it, but I can sometimes feel like I'm kind of invisible because I'm just doing what I'm doing. There's no real, I'm not running and gunning towards anything like I was when I was 20 and I had to prove something. So it's always so neat to be asked, because it's like, oh yes, I'm not invisible. And we're connecting, and there's a shared space. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. There's no way you could ever be invisible. I don't think that's possible.
I don't think so either. I work on the internet and a fair amount of cheetah print, just living my best life. I don't think so, but
that's it. All right, so let's talk about that. How did you get into the wonderful world of astrology? How did this all come to pass? Because I know this wasn't your career from the get-go. Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so astrology for me really came in very, very early. I was 6, almost 7, so right there, almost at that first Saturn square. And my mother really realized that I was interacting with the world and doing the world very differently than my brothers were. So it was actually my mom who took me to my first metaphysical fair. And, I loved it because I felt like those were the people, those were my tribe. And I saw numerology and tarot and all of these things, and it was great. And I loved being around it and seeing people do that. And we went to an astrologer's table, and for me, it was like I had done it 10,000 times. Like I was watching her do something I had done over and over and over again. And it was I call it one of the most honest feelings that I've ever had in my whole life, because it was just something that I knew. So that didn't make me run towards astrology. It wasn't like that for me. Instead, it was this very solid feeling that there was nothing that I was going to do that I was ever going to lose astrology, or it was never going to leave me or anything like that. So instead, it was more part of the movement of my everyday life, to know where the moon was, to be know what was going on in the sky, to understand the interpretations and things like that. And that is really how I used astrology in my life. And I went on to have went down a more traditional academic realm. I say that, but my chart is primarily Venus and Mercury. So when people find out that I, did my bachelor's degree in dance and language, it's like, well, there you have it. You know what I mean? I was like, I just want to be beautiful and say things, which would be great. And then it kind of went from there that astrology still came with me. I would talk about it with people at work. I would study and read what I was doing. I really wasn't even studying it. I was just reading it. But I was just never afraid that I would ever be without it. And as the universe would have it, I was thinking at that time, I should probably, do something really traditional, like become a doctor, because I always knew I was supposed to be a doctor. It didn't mean I knew what kind. And I tell you what, we got into the lab and I was like, oh, gross. Like, this is not my life. This is not for Stormie, So
No.
I was like, okay, it's clearly not that kind of doctor. And very shortly after that, the universe snatched me and dropped me into radio broadcasting. And I did radio for a decade. And I always say when I fell into radio, I absolutely fell in love. I mean, like, you think about that, like, that love of your life feeling, that was it. And I learned every area, the engineering in the back, the why does this chord do that, all of that was all encompassing for me. And at the time, I didn't think it had anything to do with astrology, except for every here and there I'd be talking about something and drop in some astrological information, or I'd say something about the moon, But what I didn't realize is that radio trained me to build the business that I have today. Really, like, the universe stepped in for me when I came to a point where I was like, I don't know. And I went on to get a traditional academic doctorate education in business, and proceeded to continue to build this practice and now help other people to do the same. So it's like, like this, like everybody else is like the roller coaster story. But when I look back at it, I think astrology and the universe had a hand the entire time and knew where I was going, even though intellectually I didn't realize this is how the path was going to unfold. So it's been a beautiful journey, though.
Yeah, awesome. So I apologize. I should have introduced you as Dr. Stormie Grace.
Oh, it is so funny. You know what? I'm trying to get better. I just want to share this with people. That's a big deal. I worked really hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have the hardest time using that title because but my mother doesn't. So my mom this podcast, so she's like, no, it's Doctor.
It's Doctor. Okay. I'll make sure I put that in the proper intro later. Awesome. So I do use the traditional house system. I use the whole sign house system. So I have had a look at your chart as well because I'm fascinated by how things play out, as you probably are too, in people's lives. So I did notice that you have Gemini in the 10th house, like you have Mercury, in the 10th house. Yeah. So it's not surprising that you, like, as soon as you fell into radio, it was like, this makes total sense. Yeah. But also that's such a huge part of your, astrology practice as well, is sharing what you know and what sharing and teaching and learning is a huge part of your current career in astrology. Can you tell me a few other, parts of your chart that you now see reflected in your business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as far as my chart, I can share too, but my business also has a chart, and that's something I'm really big on people doing, is pull your business's chart so that your business can tell you what it's here to build, But for me, when I look through the lens of my own chart at what I do in the world in general, I've got a quincunx that sits between my Jupiter in Scorpio and my Mercury in the top of my chart. And this is, and has been probably for the last 6 years, one of my favorite aspects in my chart. Because I used to try to get that quincunx to make sense, and it's like, the inconjunct is just this itchy tag of constant adjustment. And when it clicked to me that I was like, wait, I'm allowed to be this perceivable inconsistency. And so I let Mercury be Mercury high in the sky. So typically when people are watching a video of mine, we're in there for 5 to 10 minutes. We are getting in, I'm giving you the information, we're getting out, right? It is concise. And then when you want that depth of Jupiter and Scorpio with me, I found this in my sessions where I really peel with people. Or when I'm teaching or I'm doing a live presentation or something, then that Jupiter can kind of just peel and unfold and get to the depth and the root. And it's such a beautiful aspect. And I think it's so profound to me in my business because it meant that I was allowed to just be as I am in all parts and let them work as they need to. Instead of like, oh man, I spent probably a good few years in my business trying to be concise and deep. And it was like, well, I'm not, you know, that is just, I am concise or I am deep, it seems.
Yes.
And that's okay. So I've really loved working with that. And I think one of my other favorite aspects is that I have Venus at the Aries point, so at 0 degrees of Aries. That just is a whole bag of beans in and of itself. But it's also opposing my Mars at 0 Libra. And this has been incredible for me as a person and in my business, because when that feminine masculine vibration is out of whack, I really am very keyed into that. And I can really find good use for helping to restore that balance. It also, I didn't expect this, but it made me stronger and more aware of colors and branding. And I was like, oh, and it was actually a different teacher, Kathy Rose, who taught me about Venus at the Aries point. She said, you will forever be keyed to the frequency of Venus. And that has been incredibly true for me. So there's a lot of colorology that comes into what I do as well.
Yeah. And that very, the bright, bold colors of an Aries Venus as well is something that I notice about, you know, your own branding as well. It's very bold. It's very bright. It's very like using those kind of stronger colors and stronger aspects, which to me always speaks of the fire signs. Like whenever your business brand, whenever you've got Venus in a fire sign, it always feels a little bit more punchy and exciting. So that's awesome. So you practice more modern astrology, right? So how did you, or do you kind of do you think of it as like a bit of a blend of all of the? Yeah,
it's one of those interesting modern questions, I think. Like, unless you do specifically Vedic or Jyotish or traditional, I feel like the rest of us are a big mix out of here. But my base actually came from Stephen Forrest and the evolutionary school, and then I moved on to more humanistic psychological astrology through the Noel Till line. And you know, in there is the modern rulership of things, is more modern concepting. So yes.
Yes.
Is my answer. Yes.
Yes, but it feels like to me the way that you practice astrology, the way that you teach it, is very much a bit of like everything's included. It's not like you're strictly one, you know, this is the only way to do it. You're very much like there are multiple ways of doing this thing. There are multiple ways of getting this answer, you know, and that's what I really resonated with you about the way that you teach as well, and the people that you bring in to learn from. You know, you're not just kind of keeping it to a certain type of astrology. It's kind of bringing it all to the table and then seeing what resonates with you, which is awesome. I think that's the best way to kind of get to know if astrology is right for you, rather than feeling stuck in one type and then going, oh no, that doesn't really work for me. Being exposed to like the whole range, because there is so much you can pull from different areas, like so different teachers. That's the beauty of it. At the moment, I think it's so amazing because of the way we're all connected on the internet that we can learn from all these people, because a few years ago it was really hard, right? But you had to pick a teacher and stick with the teacher because
of where you were, right?
Yeah, that's it.
It's not that way anymore. And That is something that I have a heart for, is the exposure. Because I genuinely believe that there are a ton of us astrologers out in the world doing what we're doing. And I just want you, in whatever way you're an astrologer, whether it's just for yourself, your own household, to practice professionally, I want you to find your resonance. And the way that we do that is through exposure, right? Who is your teacher? Because somebody speaks your astro language, and they'll help you unfold and unpack this thing in a way that's really useful and delicious into your own life. So, that is absolutely a goal of Stormie Grace, is a high amount of exposure to what's available to us.
Yes, I love that. So tell me more about, your own academy, the YouTube Academy that you set up, and how that kind of came to be, because you've obviously you built this amazing YouTube channel when you kind of, I guess, moved into astrology more full time after broadcasting and all of that happened. How did that come to pass?
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say, we better talk about how that
go back
happened.
Yes.
So just the honest to goodness truth is that I was at the radio station. I was at this place that I had loved, just so deeply for so long. And I was coming towards my Saturn return, right? And this is where I think that astrology really needs to be lived experientially as well, and then shared, because I knew of the Saturn return. And over the last couple years, 27, 28, and there's some things at the radio station were starting to feel like they didn't fit as much, but I still loved it,
Yeah.
And on my Saturn return, not because I planned it, but on my Saturn return, I had my little lunchbox, and I was walking into the radio station, and I walked through the doorway. I had walked through 100 times, and I felt like I walked through a portal to another world, and I was hit with tears, and I heard the universe say, "We're going." And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me. I'm leaving this place, and I'm never coming back in this way." And I knew it so deeply, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And as the day is like unfolding, and I'm like, where am I at? It was kind of the Twilight Zone for me. And it really was. I literally had my little lunchbox over here, walked through the doorway into adulthood. That is really what happened for me. And I was going to not only start my astrology practice, but I was going to start it on YouTube. And at that time, I had watched one YouTube video, and it was Beyonce. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I want to further say that really, truly, in my core, I have spent years saying, I don't understand why anybody would ever own a business. What a terrible idea. So when I tell y'all that I was not planning it to go this way, but I always knew I would have some kind of center for healing and for astrology. But I thought, like when I was 50, or I just had a different vision. So that is how it happened. And I slowly started watching other YouTube videos on how to build a YouTube channel, because I didn't know anything, And I kept watching videos of women who were like 30, who were whatever, right? Like women. And trying to follow them, and I could not pick up the resonance at all. So how I actually built my YouTube channel was following a 13-year-old little squeaky voice boy. And for whatever reason, I could hear him. And I built my YouTube channel, and I had to just start making content from there. And it took me a year to let go of the radio station, and it was really staunch different. And I share this with people so that you understand, when you're building your business, sometimes it really is wild. I was going to this place that I had loved for so long, every day for a year, and I used to wear all my bold colors and be me and all of that. And I spent a year wearing black and having to convince myself to get out of the car to go in, and having to take breaks from my desk to go cry, because I was in so much internal pain and fear to let go and just let the universe catch me and take me to do this thing. So it took me a year. And then I went in and I let that job go. And it was the scariest thing. I had two children. I was in school, had a mortgage, I had bills, and I was going to go be a YouTuber. I think I had like 22 subscribers, right? It was not ideal.
Yeah, well.
Ideal. to do that. And I just kept making content, and it was not business planned. It was none of that. I just had to keep making content. Yeah. And then it happened.
Yeah.
Really
and how long did it take? How long did that take, that process of, that transition of feeling like you'd finally let go of the old Stormie and you were now this new version that was a YouTuber?
Yeah, well, I think probably about year 3.
Wow.
Because honestly, when I started making content, I came from radio, so I was comfortable doing just audio content, and I would do sun sign compatibilities, which they're not always the best, but I just had to make content. And somebody in my comment section said, we're supposed to be able to see you, right? Because when I was starting, it wasn't really the time. There wasn't a lot of just audio stuff. Now there's tons of audio stuff out there.
Yeah.
But there wasn't when I started. And I was like,
of course.
I'm going to have to turn the camera on, So it was like, okay, another step towards I'm actually doing this.
Yes.
I had very few. I think I had 100 and something subscribers at the time. And I wanted to know for sure that I could really do this. So I put a link under a video saying, you know what? I'll read your chart for free, thinking to myself, nobody's going to be watching this and who's going to care? And in that year, I did 200 free readings of charts. And that's how I learned really how quickly things can go on social media and who's paying attention and who's not. It was fantastic for me because I knew I could read charts for sure.
Yes.
But here was the interesting part that I lead up to this to say, I did a chart reading for a friend of mine, and it was so funny. At the end of it, she was like, that was really fantastic. And she said, you're a really good astrologer. And I was like, oh, I'm not an astrologer. And she had this really long pause where she was just looking at me. And she said, well, I just paid you for an astrology reading. So, and that's when we clicked. And I had been 3 years into the game, 3 years into doing and building what I was doing. And I was like, oh, but I always tell people, when you're at your Saturn return, whether it's the first, the second, or the third, it's like 2-3 years after it before you realize you're
absolutely
like on an island. And it wasn't different for me. I was like, oh yes, I am an astrologer. And
that's it.
And then things really did get different.
Yeah, I think, definitely the Saturn return is that it is a bit of a slow burn. Like even though you had such a kind of cataclysmic moment of like realization, it still takes that time because it's Saturn, right? It's still got to it's really about that integration process and completely restructuring you internally. But the step into astrology as well, I think, is like it takes some time to actually grapple with that new identity as an astrologer. Like, oh, that's what I am now? Like, okay. I definitely don't think that I took on as well that kind of title until at least I was 2 years or so into the path of reading charts and, understanding more about how it all worked, because it doesn't really nobody just flicks a switch and says, hey, you're an astrologer now. Like you have to own it. You have to feel it. So yeah.
That's really true, because when I did, all of that time at the metaphysical fair when I was little was like, yeah, and you've always been one weirdo. Like, it was like waiting for me to remember. Almost.
Yes.
But it was like, you've done this a million times. You're fine. Go do that. That's literally what you're built to do. So it was like a nice little recall, but it takes a minute sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you built this YouTube channel. You started just putting content out there. When did you realize, hey, this is actually working, other than, reading 200 charts for free, that, this was a business and that it was like kind of growing beyond you? Because I think that's kind of part of the business journey, isn't it? It's like we start out as very much our it's us. It's our personality. And, you know, we're making money from our person. And then all of a sudden it becomes something else, like it's its own entity. When did that kind of kick in for you where you were like, oh yeah, this is happening?
Yeah, I think honestly for me, there were some back roads here as well, but I had been making content for a few years. The channel was growing consistently. You know, I was making good money off of the backside of YouTube as well. And that was really neat. So I started to see some sustainability. But when I think I really knew is that I got scared. I got into financial fear, which there was no real reason for, but my head was telling me, you know, and I got into a good tizzy. And I ended up going out and picking up another job in addition to Stormie Grace. And the universe is just, I think, very specific with us when we're supposed to be on a path and we try and tootle off, you know. And that's what happened to me. I took this job and the series of events that came with it. First of all, I had stepped in for a woman who was on maternity leave, and it was back in radio, and I was doing a sector of radio that wasn't my favorite. I knew how to do it, right? And that woman ended up coming back from maternity leave, took a part-time position as the front desk person, and it was so funny. She missed her job so bad, and I missed having time to focus on Stormie Grace. So when I really knew is that she came into work one day, was in the bathroom crying because she just wanted to do this job, you know? And I looked at her and I said, do you want to switch jobs with me? Because I'd love to just be here 15 hours a week, and you can have this whole office back. And we went to our HR manager and asked her if we could do that. And she said, you realize you will lose this, 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 and this. And I was having my gum and I was so excited. I was like, yeah, take it. Yeah. You know, and so for me, I always say that Stormie Grace is a business built on faith, because I have had to take some leaps over and over and over again and just watch that the universe generally has my back. And that was one of them. And very quickly after that, the coolest thing happened is they came to me, and the company itself was getting rid of that position. So they gave me a severance package that covered the next 6 months of my life to the exact dollar amount of my bills. And I knew. Then I really, really knew, Paula. I was like, the universe has been clear. I cannot ask for another sign that this is where I'm supposed to be. And I tumbled head first then into Stormie Grace, and I let the universe have me. And I was like, show me what to do here. And I've been doing that ever since. Yeah. And that was it. Isn't it funny? It wasn't like, oh, I made all this money or whatever. I was like, I kept trying to leave. And the universe is like, get in here.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. And just how you manifest the right thing at the right time to show you this is the path. This is the path for you. That's beautiful. Yeah, so that was the moment, and then you've gone on. So now, how many years have you been YouTubing? Have you been running this YouTube channel for? Like, how long has it been going? Is it 10 years now?
Almost, so 9 since 2014, and I would say really since 2016 more seriously, and it's kind of gotten more and more serious. 2018 was a real turning point for me in terms of like owning my style and owning really what I wanted to do in content. You know, that first couple years was like just getting in here and making a little something to do it, so I could learn how to do it. And then it was, here's what we do in this industry, and then it was like, no, here's what I do to add to this industry. So it's kind of been that advancement, and from there and in there, I started early on, 2018, doing some interviews with other astrologers, and that was cool, and it was kind of okay. But what it really did was get me prepared for the lockdown. You know, prepared for that, and to really be aware of like what was going on in the astro community, who was teaching what was their style, who did business, who did medicine, what do the students need, what are they asking for, you know, what do I want to provide? All of those questions I had been really well prepared for. So I started first with the eat and greets, pulling astrologers from all over the world to just do global interviews with. And again, I would bring their style or their technique in. And then I realized that this was cool, but we weren't actually teaching anything. You kind of had to know something to jump in the middle of the topics we were talking about. And Uranus made an ingress into Taurus. It just touched in before it went back into Aries. And it was like I got hit with a whole lightning bolt. I'm a Taurus. And I'm at 14 degrees, right? You wouldn't necessarily think that, but for me, again, the astrology has to be lived as the experiential. And when planets come into new signs, I'm very sensitive to that. And Uranus did that little touch into Taurus, and within 3 days, I launched and built an entire YouTube Academy. Funded. I was supposed to have 12 teachers show up with this idea to let's just teach, and we ended the academy with 52 teachers who said, oh, pick me, I want to do this too. I want in, I want to teach about this. And the cooler part to me about this is one, that it fed so many, right? It fed so many. It was community funded, but then all of the teachers, no matter what their discipline they came from, we had to figure out how to teach together to get people the basics or the concepts of how to apply this, and then give them space to branch off into whatever discipline they might be called to. And that is how it happened. That's how it happened. It's like, ooh, I'd never launched a crowdfunding campaign in my life, nor had I ever thought about doing it.
Yeah.
3
wow.
days.
3 days. That's amazing. Yeah. So that all happened. Did that all happen at the start of the pandemic, or was it before? It was before that the actual YouTube Academy came into existence.
It was like mid-end pandemic. Right there. Yeah.
So that was like, I think, a lifeline for a lot of people too, who were like, I feel like that whole experience of 2020 really helped people reconnect with metaphysics in general and astrology particularly, because astrology had something to say about that whole experience. It was like, yes, this energy was coming. We saw this coming. But, obviously we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but you can see the sign, you can see the planet configurations and go, something's coming and you need to be prepared. And this is now how you deal with it. And so I think having that access to that academy, having access to YouTube in general, and people and teachers, and people were so hungry for that connection and that information, at that time. So I think it was just like, again, the universe kind of coming together and be like, yes, this is what's needed at the moment. Yeah. And that you were able to kind of tap into that and then, create this kind of movement, I guess, with all of these amazing astrologers that has then, continues to play out, continues to feed that now, I think is so amazing. So
it's been really incredible, and the multifaceted dynamics of how this worked is that it's not just this altruistic, like give it to the community kind of thing. Every teacher that came on got to teach, feed the community, but also put their own links to their own classes, so it fed them as well. So it was really, that is something that is just so important to me, is that when you come to the table, everybody eats, right? Everybody has enough to eat, whatever the dynamic is. And so it was really beautiful then to see it happen and play out, and then it continues to play out. And that is, I had a chart reading right before the pandemic, and it was a dragonic chart reading, and I had never experienced anything like that, and I didn't know this person who was reading it, and it was so funny. He said, oh my gosh, he's like, you're going to probably end up running like a broadcast agency or something like that. He said, I can see it for you. There's multiple people. And it was just so funny, because I thought, well, I came from broadcasting,
Yeah.
And to watch as that whole thing played out, I got such clear vision on what I could offer to astrology in a whole. The teachers, the professionals, the students, the families, and it's just been an incredible experience.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So now you've got big changes underway. I mean, we just talked about this earlier, that you're on the way, moving your family, everything you own to Europe, to Spain from the US, which is really exciting. I just want to reflect on this, because I want to talk about a few of the aspects that are happening in 2023 that, kind of are important for business in general. But what was it did you see something in your own chart? What prompted this kind of massive move to Europe?
Well, it's kind of interesting. The astrology is always interesting, but, in first flicker, when Uranus was coming into Taurus, I'm a 9th house sun. And so I wondered, what was that going to be? What was going to be this mass expansion? But today, I also put publishing, marketing, YouTubing, broadcasting, and these kinds of explosions in that vast travel dynamic of the 9th house as well. So I was like, what is this? And my YouTube channel continues to grow nice and slow, like Taurus, right? So I wondered what this really different vibration was going to be, but I could feel there was definitely something. And then as Uranus did that first pass across my sun, I realized I had to go back to my nodal story. I had to go back 19 years. I was like, okay, wait a minute. What was happening for me 19 years ago, because the bus has come back, and we just live our patterns. Hopefully we bring more wisdom to them, but we just live our patterns. And I realized, and it almost sank me to tears, is that I was on my way to Spain and to Europe to train to be an interpreter. That's what I wanted to do, was use language. I don't like writing. I don't care for that. But I love to speak, and I'm a polyglot. And that is the love of my life, is language. And I realized, and instead what I did was stay and have my daughter, my oldest daughter. And so it was interesting how in that story then everything unfolded, and I didn't have to make a single thing happen. It quite naturally came up, the way that I think about countries, and I'm also 40 now, so the way that I review life and these kinds of things, I started to have those natural inclinations of questioning, but in cyclical timing with my own chart. And it was like, well, the clearest answer right now is to go to Europe, is to go back. And to me, it felt like I'm finally going to go home. And thus, it's so cool, because when I look at that too, and I just look at the history of people in general, our people, no matter where you're from, our people have been nomadic, right? We've needed to move to find what is best and where we can build the best lives. And today, what they call us are digital nomads. Right? Which I think is really fantastic when we're talking about what is the astrology that we're coming forward to with Pluto entering into Aquarius. And I think one of the biggest aspects we have this year is Jupiter squaring Pluto coming up on May 17th. I think that's Paula's like, to me, that's the end. Like, the old world is done. The door is closed on that. And you've got to be prepared with some skills and some moving forward in your business. To be a part of this new world that will be on the table for sure. So I feel like, how sacred is that? We're in the last few weeks of the old world.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? And so that's all, how it came to be. Uranus ignited the 9th house sun. It also ignited the nodal story in my chart, and we're all
Yeah. Wow. I mean, as a Taurus rising, I totally resonate with that whole Uranus coming in and just like shaking everything up. But that's beautiful, because it absolutely would have activated. And I'm 12 degrees, so I feel you on that.
Right there.
Yeah. Also a 9th house sun too. But my sun's in Capricorn, so completely different.
you've had plenty. You've had plenty going on.
Lots going on, but you know, we've already covered that. But yeah, like that makes total sense. Of course, you know, that would all get activated for you, and now it all falls into place because that's the pattern, that's the story, that's the pattern you're living out this lifetime. So
yeah. And it was
that's
so
magic.
Interesting. I just want to share this because it was actually astrologer Spencer Michaud, because when Uranus hit my sun, I just remember again that experiential astrology that I honestly felt like I was going to be a monster in my own life. I mean, to the depth that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get divorced in a marriage that I've been happy in. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know I was going to get divorced. All of these things, I was very quickly ready to shed them or move towards a vast amount of freedom. And what I said when Uranus moved up to my sun is I said, I feel like a monster, or I'm going to be a monster in my own life. And I didn't know part of the mythology is that when Uranus came into Taurus's space, it was literally a monster. And it was Spencer Michaud who taught me about that. And it was really neat to see that I didn't know this story. I don't know everything that's in the books out there, but the experience that I had was living astrology, right? What people have documented for ages when we see these movements happen. And I thought, how cool is that? I'm not divorced. Nowhere near it.
That's good.
We've survived. But
that's good.
So I share that too. So if people are coming to these Uranian transits, especially something to your sun or your moon, really, it can feel like, I don't know what this is going to look like at the end, but it is going to look really different.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've talked about my own Uranus transit crossing my ascendant in another episode, but it was definitely that moment of like literally the week that, you know, Uranus crossed the 12-degree mark, I changed my name. And I didn't, and I'm a Taurus rising, like changing things like that, not kind of something that I do. Like I had thought about it for a long time. But I was like, nah, I won't do it. Like, just leave it. Just who can be bothered, you know? But all of a sudden that week, I had that experience of like, somebody tagged me on Instagram and I went, that's not my name.
Yeah.
That's not my name. So I changed my last name to Palace. And like that week, I was like, okay, that's it. It's changing. And I had thought of, obviously, Palace has the astrology, has that symbolism to me. I have a Greek background as well. I have, you know, Pallas Athena was kind of something that I always identified with anyway. But, you know, it wasn't like I had thought about it for ages and ages and ages and then finally done the thing. It was like that lightning struck and I had no choice. I was just I was burning away the last identity. So, yeah. So.
Reading my mail, because that is exactly what it is. I was like, well, this will all be burnt down shortly.
Yep.
and we'll see what's on the other side. But I just knew I had to move towards that innovation.
That's it. Awesome. So with Jupiter moving into Taurus very soon, as we're recording this, you know, Jupiter is going to be moving into Taurus in the next few weeks, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you've talked about that Pluto square. So it's going to be squaring as it moves in, right as it moves in.
Right.
It's going to be squaring Pluto which is just at that first, or just at that kind of ingress into Aquarius. But what do you think overall this whole Jupiter transit is going to feel like? You know, what is it going to shift for us? Because at least now we have Jupiter in a sign for a whole year, which is nice, as opposed to kind of this Pisces Aries confusion that we've had the past year. What do you think it's going to look like for business? Because Taurus is a business sign. You know, it is all about, getting things done in business, making money, setting the foundations.
Having the right relationships and resources so you can make money. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, so a couple things. First of all, for me with Jupiter, just in general, I know like it's one of our benefic planets and we love that. But I also feel like Jupiter is kind of like the price matching. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, what you've put in, Jupiter's happy to match. So, yeah. But then also send you teachers to help you expand the horizon of wherever you're at. But I also teach my students that Jupiter is like, listen, I will preload you with this fortune or with this wisdom, per se. But you can't keep it. You have to take it out and expand and share it. And that's how you actualize the juice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in Taurus, one of the first things that I think of is that your Uranus has been shaking the Tauran area of your chart. And what that has done is Earth moves in and down. So while it has lifted and cracked open the mountain that is you, very fixed areas of our chart, right? It's unearthed the bodies, the stuff that's down there that needed to be dealt with, absolutely. But the gems and the minerals and the resources and the richness that is also in your own earth, that now Jupiter will call up and out because they are actually your resources, right? Like you have what you need already. And I think that this Jupiter transit will bring experiences to share your resources, and not only just like, oh, this is an awesome opportunity, but like I have to expand my resources. My wisdom, my experience to share with the world will be a part of how I make my way next. It will be a part of how I make money. It will be a part of how I feed people and myself. And the biggest part of it to me is that when we do it, is the value and what we value and how we value things and services and ourselves and others is really the gift that I think Jupiter leaves us with, Because Jupiter ran itself over there through Aries. It was like, get your courage right now because you're going to have to go build something solid with all of that,
Yes.
So beautifully, I think, on time, the node has been here as well. So in its own, like, wise, earthy way, I feel like these planets have been like, we're innovating you because it's time. It is destiny for the things that worked in the past to fall to the past. And let's just keep the ones that can still serve in the future, right? Business has just been business since the beginning of business. We can put it online, we can take it offline, but some of the structures and functions and how to make one work are exactly the same. It's very Saturnian, I think. But now it's like, okay, take the same Saturnian models, put your own delicious resources and experience in it, and go feed the people. And this is how I think we actualize this transit. And of course, you go back in your own chart, what was going on 12 years ago for you? What were you developing then that now is like a buffet of resource for you to actualize?
Yeah, I should just explain that the reason you look back 12 years is because a Jupiter transit is that we experience Jupiter in the same sign every 11 to 12 years. So if you can remember or, figure out what you were doing 11 to 12 years ago, you can kind of see how this pattern might be playing out for you again as Jupiter re-enters Taurus again. So
I think it's just going to be, I don't think it's the biggest thing coming, but when we're talking about changing the way that we think and the philosophies that we govern with around what we think are resources, it's a big deal, again, to watch that Jupiter-Pluto square, because we're really called to release outdated models and ideas and belief structures that can't really be built on anymore. So it's a big deal to rework your psyche,
Yes. It's all happening. As if we haven't had enough happening. We got more happening in 2023. But it's exciting too. It's like, okay, we're recalibrating to this like whole new way of being. I think. And particularly because it's Taurus, there's definitely a being. It's an embodiment, right? It's not just a processing or a happening up here. It's actually happening within us and within, what we ground into as well, into that earth energy. So yeah, it's
so much, and it's exciting because I think that when Pluto moved into Aquarius, we also gave birth to our next generation of astrologers, and it turns out some of them are between 38 and older, and some of them are babies, right?
yes.
A whole generation of adult astrologers coming to be in the resources of life, and who they have also embodied is now going to make them phenomenal practitioners as well.
Yeah.
And business people. We're seeing it called up and out. I was just doing astrology forever. It didn't matter that my training was in business, but it's funny. Mine was more of a Capricorn ignition, but trying to my sun, where I was like, I want to help astrologers build businesses because we're not supposed to out here, right?
That's it.
It's happened that we're not making financial means that are good for us, right? So it's like, who we've also been, I think, is just going to be so rich in helping us help others to become who they're going to be too. It's very exciting.
Yeah. Very exciting. I love it. Well, thank you so much for this really cool conversation that has kind of touched on so many things. I loved hearing about your own personal journey, but also like reflecting on a few of those astro aspects that have shown up for you and will be showing up for all of us this year. It's all super cool. So thank you. If you want to check out Stormie Grace's YouTube channel, please do. It's amazing. I will pop all of the links in the show notes so you can go and check it out and subscribe. And I love watching your horoscopes. You produce a prolific amount of content. There's still, despite all of the things,
right?
Yes.
Prepared.
Yes, very prepared. And so there's so much there, even though you're going through this major life transition and moving house moving to a completely new country, you still have all of this amazing content. And so go and dive in. I love the way that you explain what's going on in such a kind of empowering way. Like some astrologers, and I love astrology, I love astrologers, but some people can put the spin that it's a little bit more negative, or a little bit like, this is going to be challenging, or, but I love the way that you do it, because it's kind of like, it presents it in a very much more manageable way. Like, this is happening, but this is how you'll deal with it. And this is okay. And this is what you can be excited about too. Like there's more of that kind of optimism in there, and more of the, leaning into the Venus, more of the leaning into the feel good vibes of the astrology, which is fantastic. So thank you so much. Is there anything you want to share with the audience before we wrap up? Anything that's coming up in your business or anything like that?
There's going to be a lot of travel and a lot of content, and honestly, on the YouTube channel, I've been really excited since I am moving and transitioning. People from our community have shown up and said, we want to also make sure that you, who does make a lot of content, are able to rest. So people have shown up and created transit videos for the YouTube channel to give me a space to rest. And I really want to say thank you, first of all, to our soulmate family, because that's what we call our tribe, for people reaching out to do that. That's a really cool invitation for me to get to know people's astro styles, and I want people to watch. And if you are practicing and you are ready to step up and you're ready to step out, this is a wonderful place for not only exposure but to join the tribe And so hopefully you guys are watching for that as well, because we've got a phenomenal tribe of people who know what's going on out there, and we're just trying to make sure we're all informed and ready to go.
Yes, we're all informed. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. And all the best with the move as well.
Yes, thank you. And then, well, good luck with having a baby. And it's all just right. I mean, everybody's got a thing going on. It's huge. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's all happening. All right, I'm just going to stop recording. Hang on.